All right, everyone. Yesterday there was an attack by Iranian forces via cruise missile on a couple of U.S. bases in Iraq. Now, of course, Iraq and Iran are not the same thing, so this complicates things. I'm going to put it out there in no uncertain terms. I oppose any concept of a war with Iran. I think it's a terrible idea. I think what would happen is, even if you're all like, huzzah for the USA, bravado, and patriotism, wave the flags, or the neocon thing, even if you're like a total Bushite, attempting to actually wage, especially a ground war with Iran, would be a league different from doing so in Iraq. Bigger country, considerably better trained, better manpower, better technology at this point than Saddam ever fielded. Presumably more national loyalty to the government. I understand my liberal revolution sentiment. I understand my simmering revolution, but ultimately at the end of the day, people there have gotten a look at what happened to Iraq after the United States got involved, and I don't think it'd go well for us. So that being said, it would become another quagmire, as Dick Cheney said in the mid-90s about Iraq, but nobody fucking listened thereafter. It'd be a terrible idea. That being said, I'm noticing a little bit of hypocrisy among certain America Bad style commentators. I'm not going to name names, but some of these people appear to be taking some sort of joy in the prospect of dead U.S. troops. Well, then you're not really anti-war, because quite clearly this is an escalation, so it's not out of anti-war sentiment that you were against the killing of Soleimani. It was simply because the U.S. did it. It means that you have a stick up your ass about the United States. I would like to ask you this again. You sit there talking like a fucking hippie when Soleimani gets killed, and now all of a sudden people on that side are like, yeah, they're getting like a big dick about it, like, yeah, Iran's strong, American pigs out, and kill the U.S. troops. That's nonsense. It's really fucked up, actually, when you think about it. I don't have any respect for people who look at it as an us and them black and white issue, and so when one side is getting bombed, they're cheering, and when the other side is, they like recoil and withdraw and get all fucked up about it. No, human beings died or got injured, or a human target was attacked with the potential for casualties. No fucking different. There's no fucking difference. It's just like the imperialism that you see from China trying to colonize half of Africa right now is just as fucking brutal and despotic as anything the U.S. has been doing dicking around in the Middle East. So let's look at it the way it really is. Let's just get past the moral component and just look at the on-the-ground situation. At this particular time, it doesn't appear there were any U.S. casualties. That's good. For many reasons, not least of which is, of course, nobody is going to have to go back to their family in a pine box. Nobody's going to have to go back minus a limb or two. That's good. At least that's the report right now, and I could be wrong, but from what I'm seeing, no casualties. It appears that the attack, by and large, is a symbolic retaliation. That is, that specifically what happened is Soleimani's gone. Iran realizes if it actually attacks U.S. troops, if it actually, blows up a group of tanks or something, or a bunch of soldiers, it brings a significant response, probably disproportionate to its own abilities, and what happens is then you get another layer of attacks. The U.S. wipes out a military base, then Iran feels pressured to attack again. That can turn into a war. Hopefully, the symbolic nature of the attack, which has to do with infrastructure that we're leaving behind anyway if we leave the Middle East finally, which is what Trump, I presume, hopefully is still going to do, is that nothing will happen in response. If Trump is smart, he's got one option here, and he's going to give a statement in a few hours, I believe. He said this morning, it's 5:30 a.m. Eastern time right now. He'll probably make it at 8 or 9 o'clock when people are just getting up. Here's the smart thing to say. The smart thing to say is to talk to the American people, talk down the fucking neocons and say, look, we've fundamentally won. We just butchered Soleimani. They've made their point, but ultimately at the end of the day, no U.S. troops were killed. They didn't blow up any tanks or anything. They didn't attack a refinery. They're not slaughtering or holding hostage civilians. This is a symbolic attack, and we recognize he can do the big dick thing. Do the big dick thing, Trump. Instead of pressing the little red button and firing missiles back, fire a verbal missile instead, which is what Iran did the other day. Oh, we would attack U.S., but they have no heroes to attack, so except for SpongeBob, so it's going to be inefficient, or something to that effect, which was, it's kind of an insult. A funny one, very meme-worthy, but an insult. Do the same thing in kind. And Trump probably knows this is sort of how politics works there. It's half words and half action, largely symbolic action unless you're crazy. Don't actually fight them. That's ultimately what some people there want. The fanatics there and the neocons, none of which bothered to vote for Trump in the first place, by the way, in the U.S., they want war. They want Armageddon because they're like sadistic or masochistic or something, or both. For some reason, like dead bodies and stuff turns them on in a really visceral way, and I'm wondering whether these people shouldn't be locked away in a fucking nut ward. Like John McCain, his corpse has a boner right now. John Bolton, he's rubbing his hands together greedily and thinking about all that Raytheon cash and all the crude oil. Brent crude oil he's going to suck up tonight in his martini. Here's what Trump should do. Say, look, haha, U.S. public, we've achieved our goal in the Middle East. Iran had the ability to attack our forces for real, and all they did is fire into an empty airfield. Why do you think that is? Ha ha ha! That's what he should do. And then we should leave. We should get the fuck out of the region. There's only one legitimacy to us being in the Middle East at all. U.S. bases in countries which have explicitly given us their blessing, like nations like Egypt, that are at least marginally allied with us, that are not hostile towards us. Nations like Egypt, Turkey, to an extent now in the age of Erdogan, and some of these others. You'd think of the nation of Jordan, our actual friends within the region. Go ahead and maintain a presence there. Here's what I would do if I were Trump. I would realign our Middle Eastern policy. I would make a statement to the world, say, the world policing thing is over. That's last decade. It doesn't make any sense. We've been dicking around since the 50s. Largely, it hasn't accomplished anything. Here's what we're going to do now. We are interested in guaranteeing shipping lanes within the region. We're interested in making sure that nothing throttles the Straits of Hormuz, because we're not going to deal with other nations fucking us and our allies over, especially those within the region that generate the energy that goes through the Straits of Hormuz. Maintain a limited air and naval presence, and make it clear to other countries. We're not going to do jack fucking shit to you. We don't care what political system you operate under, what religious sect you operate under, or what you do within your countries. Leave our ships alone, leave tankers from other flags alone, or we will get involved. We will sink your ships, we will bomb an airfield, and then we'll leave again. And it'll be real cheap. You know what? Here's the thing. It costs so much less to deploy a mother-of-all bomb than it does any of the modern tech that we use, and it's so much more efficient. Drop a couple of those on a naval group in some naval base on the shores of Iran if they get a big dick about things, and then leave them alone. Make it clear that we're not interested in any form of adventures. And by the way, this would be a foreign policy win in the optics sense too. The United States is, and then this is perception, not an objective reality. We are perceived of as being bullies within that part of the world especially. You can't really blame people considering that we marched into Iraq, destroyed Saddam with 5 or 6 false causes for no reason, and then just never left. Now, Trump has been largely positive with regards to foreign policy. So far, what we see right now is still not a war. This is not a reason for me to cut Trump loose. No, war would be Trump says, hey, I'm gonna start bombing all sorts of targets at Iran. War would be I'm marching in. War would be, oh, we're gonna do another surge in Iraq, weed out these pro-Iranian militants or something. That would be bad. That would be a big demerit on Trump for me. So far, he hasn't done that. He's saying all is well in his tweet from last night. They're assessing casualties, which thankfully appear to be 0. That's so wonderful there were no casualties, hopefully. For all sides involved. For the Iranians, too. Dude, if you get a few U.S. casualties, then you're going to get 1,000 casualties over in Iran. It's not necessary. It's expensive. It's time-consuming. Optically, it's always a loss for us. And yes, there is propaganda from other states that are not politically aligned with us. Yes, China and Russia run propaganda ops on us when we get involved in the Middle East, which is why we should hang on loosely and have as little involvement visibly as possible. If you want to have involvement, guarantee the shipping lanes, defend nations that are our allies, and then reach out with an olive branch, with laurels of peace to other countries that are on the fence. Be the good guy for once in foreign policy, as opposed to being at least perceived of by most of the world as being a warmongering bully, because it doesn't work. It gives them fodder. It makes people that don't like the United States more brazen, more emboldened. That foreign policy, the idea, by the way, let me ask you something. The U.S. has gone through phases of different foreign policies before. Early on, we were very isolationist, didn't really do much. We had the big stick policy, like TDR mode. where we said we're going to be friends with everyone until you fuck with us, then we're going to, annex you, basically. We've had the Cold War, sort of early Cold War versus late Cold War style foreign policy, the nuclear posturing great players grand chessboard versus now the nation building and terrorists thing. Why not enter into a new era of foreign policy where the U.S. guarantees the current economic order effectively, which we can do with the assets and allies and things we've got now, but by and large uses diplomacy as opposed to bombing people to get its point across? Why don't we reconfigure our foreign policy? Because right now it appears that it's primarily sponsored by Raytheon and Brent and all of these other groups. It's literally sponsored by the fossil fuel industry and the arms industry. Now, yes, the U.S. is a massive refining and gunsmithing muscle, and we sell weapons to half the world, and it makes a lot of money and stuff. Ultimately, that money's not going to do very much if we end up in an escalated situation where there's genuinely a major war. Because ultimately, short term, yeah, maybe it helps your industry a little bit. Long term, it can fuck things up real fucking bad. And there's no guarantee we win at all. In this day and age, with cyber warfare the way it is, a nation's economy can be knocked on its ass by hackers. You don't even need to bomb anything. We're not investing nearly enough in that. Right now, China's colonized half of East Africa to the point where there are single-issue political parties actually gaining dominance there that are singularly opposed to China. Their only platform is we want to develop ourselves and China should leave us alone. It's a very interesting, changing world we live in, but war with Iran is not necessary. What would it accomplish? What could we possibly accomplish with any form of war? And I'm not talking about just a ground war or airstrikes or anything. What do we fucking accomplish if we go into Iran? But fuck nothing. But I will call out the hypocrisy of some commentators, mainly on the left, which is, ironic, cheering this on as though it's some sort of great time. No, it's not a great time. It's still a provocation. If anything, it could give cause to the warmongers in the U.S. to demand further military action. So in other words, you're pro-war. You're just anti-U.S. conducting strikes. You cry if an Iranian dies, but if American soldiers die, I don't know, I guess you act like an Iranian John McCain. That's about all. Peace out.